Have you found yourself wondering, is there something more? If so, then you, my friend, are a dreamer in waiting. I'd like to welcome you to the Dream On podcast. I'm Julia Gentry, and along with my husband, Travis Gentry, we discuss real, raw, and not small talk conversations about faith, family, entrepreneurship, and all the things that matter most in this life in order to help people bridge the gap between what they currently have and what they really want most. Join us as we give you insights, tools, and strategy to chase every dream that's on the inside of you. But be forewarned, this podcast is not for the faint of heart, but rather those of heart. This is the Dream On podcast. Welcome to another episode of the Dream On podcast. My name is Julia Gentry.
And I am Travis Gentry.
I should have introduced you today.
Every day.
Every day.
I'm Travis Gentry.
Every day. And today we are jumping in on a series. And this series is called Quitting Your Way to Success. And in each and every episode, we are just unpacking the things that potentially got you to where you are, but won't necessarily take you to where you've never been. And we're going to dive into big topics.
And this, I would say, I've been thinking about this since last week, and I would say this is probably one of the biggest pivotal points in our life year to date.
I would agree. And I think it's one that as a people we've really normalized, and we live in a world where addiction is more commonplace than not. And I think that it's been a long time coming for you and I just to walk people through our journey of sobriety and why we ultimately quit after years and years of this conversation. Mm-hmm. And to give you guys just an inside seat to how we got to this decision, why we made it, how we're sticking with it, and why we ultimately think it's something for all of us to consider.
Mm-hmm. And we're just at the beginning, I would say. Like, it's over a year now. And so we've hit that 1 year, mm-hmm. you know, and I've actually stopped drinking in the past for 1 year.
Yeah.
This was probably 8 years ago or something like that. On that 1 year though, I remember I couldn't wait, and it was New Year's, and I couldn't wait to have another drink. Mm-hmm. And so there again, we're also talking about the difference between just doing something and setting timelines behind it. And that's why New Year's resolutions don't typically work out, is because you tend to set this waypoint. Well, I'll do it for 3 months. Well, you're setting yourself up basically for failure again, because after that 3 months or after that year, that's all you're thinking about. Just get to that point. Mm-hmm. And so I remember, and we've done it multiple times, and we'll talk about that like you said, but it's so crucial. I think this time was the stake in the ground. Mm-hmm. There was no end in sight.
Yeah, well, and I think just for whoever's listening to, we're going to call this alcohol today, right? Our journey of sobriety specifically with alcohol, but maybe you're listening today and this resonates because yours is another substance, or it's food, or it's shopping, right? What we really want to unpack today are the things and the vices that we're using for different reasons. And I think that there is a huge vulnerability around this when you really start to unpack it. And we joke a lot, for me, I wasn't a quote unquote alcoholic in that I was drinking a ton all the time, right? Or that I was uncontrollable or any of those things. I was what was even called a gray drinker, that I would drink often. It's Friday, it's Monday, I've had a long day, I need to, I just need to de-stress, or I need some alone time, or let's celebrate. It was what most people would consider a normal habit, but it was eating at my soul.
Yeah, wait. Yeah, normal habit. And so that's, to me, I want to get into this a little bit, because I also think it's easy for us to say we weren't addicted. And
no, I'm not saying I'm not addicted. Here's what I'm saying. And again, let me make sure I wrap up that point. So if yours isn't alcohol today, but something in this message is resonating, it could be because your vice is something different. So every time we use even the word alcohol, insert your word, mm-hmm. right? Because we all have something.
Spending.
Totally. And I think I'm not saying I wasn't addicted. It just didn't look bad on paper. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think sometimes when we think of alcoholism or addiction, that it should look so bad that I'm hurting my family and that I'm spending a ton of money, which we were, but you know what I'm saying? Like, it should have this really bad connotation. But sometimes, or in my life, what I was starting to notice is that it wasn't bad, but I wasn't great.
But it was also the thing that we thought about the most. And so there again, like I'm going to call it addiction.
Agreed.
Our
I'm not saying it wasn't
addiction
addicted.
level is different than some people where they're not functioning. And we're talking about alcohol specifically, but it could be shopping where you max out your credit cards, you pay some down, you max them out again. And so I think it was such a thought for us of, on a nightly basis, and we would, we'd go through these like ebbs and flows of like, wouldn't drink for 2-3 days, and then it would be like, hey, I'm out and about. Do you want me to stop and get anything? Knowing I wanted you to say, well, if you're gonna stop, maybe pick up some wine, and vice versa. And it was like this constant kind of yo-yo with it, but at the same time, it was always in the back of my mind.
Always. And I think that that's when you know, when you're thinking about it so often, right? I think that is a first step into maybe I'm depending on this too much, right? Like I'm actually needing this to function, or needing this to go to that meeting, or needing this to get to the end of my day, or needing this to start my day. Now what we think is going to give us a little bit of reprieve, we're actually held bondage to it because I need it to function. And I think for me, and throughout today, my hope is to share just little why in the road moments for me, because mine, I think both of us can speak to this, but it was this gradually, suddenly with this concept of getting sober. And I just remember at one point that I landed on my conviction of being live free. And that was so important to me. Like freedom, we talk about that, obviously financially, but I just wanted to feel free. And I started to realize that I thought alcohol was giving me the chance to quote unquote be myself, or feel more secure, or have the opportunity just to take a deep breath. And what I started to notice is I'm now dependent on this thing, as opposed to just it making me it's not making me free. It's actually holding me bondage. I'm captive to this thing because if I don't have it, I quote unquote can't function, and now I'm not free. I'm addicted.
Yeah. And I would say let's talk about the difference between kind of why you drank, or even the amount. Because what I struggled with was a little bit different than what you struggled with, but they were similar.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was, if I was going to drink, I was going to drink to get the buzz, not drink just to have one or two. That wasn't like my thing. If I'm going to drink, I might as well drink 4, 5, 6 to feel a certain way, to disconnect me from the thoughts and emotions that I was having, and not necessarily consciously knowing it all the time, but having a frustrated day, or just wanting to disconnect, which is like this, the looking back, wanting to disconnect from those feelings of like whether it was hard that day or something didn't work out, or the kids, and you're like, man, if I could just have a few drinks and calm down. But you look back and you're like, calm down from what?
Yeah.
Like obviously there's something else at a deeper level that I need to look at, and not just keep covering up. And that's where it's been, a couple of decades, to be honest with you.
So here's a statement that will change your life, everybody. And I'm gonna coin Travis Gentry on this. He would say, and if you're watching on our YouTube channel, let's cheers to this. Pour me a glass of disconnect. So true. Right? And we now have friends that kind of joke about it or whatever, but if you really think about it, that was the objective to you, was I'm going to pour this glass of wine or whatever it was to disconnect from the thoughts and emotions that I'm having that you probably needed to process versus disconnect from, which is the slippery slope of, I think, alcohol is it's like, oh, if I can have this drink and numb it, I won't feel it, or it will go away, when in theory, all we're doing is kicking the can down the road. All you're doing is bottling up those thoughts and emotions, which means they're going to be there tomorrow and the next day and the next day, only stacked, which I think is the slippery slope with alcohol, is that, again, we think it's going to give us something and it's not, which means it's only stacking our escapisms.
Yep. And it's on top of that, it was the yo-yo of like not following through with commitments of, if in drinking in itself, but also other commitments. So that was kind of the place to hide too. And because then you didn't have to think about it if you didn't follow through or do something, it was like that was a place kind of to hide.
Okay, so that's my reason. So I didn't realize that this was another why in the road moment. And I had these two Bible verses, which we hear all the time, but sometimes we don't actually, I believe with the Bible, we don't actually bring it into real time. Like, how is it so applicable to my life? It's a concept, it's a theory. It's for Moses and Abraham. But there's this verse that says, do not conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Well, as you continue to read 1 Peter, it talks about being of sober mind. And I had those verses like circling in my head and in my heart. And I continued to ask myself, well, where am I conforming to this world? And we think of the big things and we forget these little slippery slope items. And I remember the day that I was in our kitchen, this was in Florida, and you and I, the conversation was getting more hot and heavy around alcohol again, and it had kind of reared its head, and we were drinking more because we had one more kid, and we were redoing the house, and we were feeling some of the stresses, and we were falling into the patterns, and it was a beautiful day, and it was a Friday, and it was hot, and it was cool, all the things, right?
Yeah.
But I can remember that it was starting to kind of get out of hand again. And I remember being in the kitchen and I literally heard the Holy Spirit, which is rarer for me, right? I don't feel like I always, when I hear. And he said, what if I could be your hiding place? And I hit my knees because I realized in that moment that I had been using alcohol as a place to hide. I was hiding my insecurities. I was hiding my boldness. I was hiding my give a damn. I was hiding my passion. I was hiding my fears. I was hiding my vulnerability. I was hiding behind even a glass of wine. Because to your point, it took kind of my edge off. So it was allowing me to be in a room that I didn't really want to be in, to do the things that I didn't really want to be doing, to put a cap on the things that I was just too passionate about. I was literally putting myself in a box every time I was having a glass of wine, thinking that it was quote unquote protecting me. Hiding me. And that one hit home because now I knew I wasn't just dealing with, and thankfully it wasn't about the alcohol anymore. It was, what am I going to do with this hiding problem? And that's when it became easier for me to slowly start to let go of alcohol, because so many of us, even the AA, hi, my name is Julie and I'm alcoholic. Like I started to let go of the alcohol as the problem, or my identity is needing this thing. And I actually was able to go, I have a hiding problem. Like that's the root of my problem. I'm trying to hide. What if I stopped hiding? Could my need or addiction for alcohol just go away?
Yeah. And you could be hiding in plain sight too.
1,000,000%.
I think that's one of the things too that I've seen and had multiple conversations with people about drinking in itself. And that is the environment. That's the, whether it's business, a lot, once you hit a certain age, it's high school or college, and you kind of you can get wrapped up into that because that's the social thing and everyone's kind of, throwing parties and you're getting together. And then after that, you start a job or a career and you start going down that path. And that may be how you network, like how you get out and how you socialize. Not only with new clients, but your coworkers. And so that's a big thing of stop, like you're hiding, you don't want to be there, you don't want to be drinking, but you feel like you have to like fit in, and also to like, because that's the industry, that's the business that you're a part of, as opposed to saying, no, this is probably going to be a little bit hard because I'm going to make this decision and I'm going to probably lose some friends because they're not going to want to hang out with me because I'm not drinking. Which
is so funny because I believe that all of us as people want to be connected. We want to be seen and we want to be heard for who we are, right? That's God put that in us because we're wired for connection, and how that translates looks different for all of us. But what's so interesting is when we hide behind our vices, we are hiding in plain sight. So that desire to connect, that desire to be seen, that desire to be known, now we're basically cutting that off every time we have a drink. So hiding in plain sight is like such a brilliant idea because you can be in the room and now I'm no longer in the room anymore because I have a wall of right? Alcohol. And I think I hear people say all the time, but well, I feel like I can just kick back and be me a little bit more when I have a drink. And you're like, that is so sad to me, because now at this level, you again are dependent on something else in order to be you, which means it's really not about the alcohol anymore. It's about, why are you hiding you, and why do you need a substance to bring you to the room, to bring you to the table?
Yep. And that's exactly why I've said it for years now, of like, pour me a glass of disconnect. Because when people start drinking, you have some of the best conversations you won't remember.
Or the worst conversations that you will remember.
That
right?
you kind of remember. Like, you don't even know why it was a bad conversation. You don't know why it was a good conversation. But you start to like have these conversations that are non-productive. And I think that's, you get these together in the social gatherings, and you hear like even the holidays, like we're in the holidays right now, and I don't know what the sales are specifically, but I know around the holidays, alcohol sales spike.
Yeah.
And you're like, that, think about that.
Yeah.
Like, you're getting together with loved ones and family to go drink, to not really embrace and enjoy each other's company fully.
Yeah. Yeah. Or
You think you are.
Yeah. Or you're drinking because you're like, I don't want to be doing this.
And most people,
and I don't
probably
want to be
50% of people drink because they don't want to be.
And this is and so this is what I would call alcohol, or any vice, is the artificial significance that we're looking for. Because if you think about what we're all wanting this glass to give us, which again, if you're watching, this is tea, this is not booze, is we're wanting significance, we're wanting love, we're wanting connection, we're wanting a break, right? Like, we're wanting peace, we're wanting, and if I might get that in theory for a minute, but it's fake. It's artificial connection. You know, it's artificial significance. It's artificial love. Why? Because it's masked with something that isn't actually allowing me to tap in at a soul level and be connected and experience love. And so, again, for me, the greatest turning point, and when people have actually come to me and said, Julia, how did you guys get sober and stay sober? I don't want to suggest that, though it's been easier than I would have imagined, it's because I asked myself this one question over and over and over again, even to the point of last night when I felt a little bit of stress, right, in the bedtime routine and doing all the things, is, what is this drink going to give me that I/God can't give myself? Right? Like, what is this going to give me? And that answer has been incredible for me, because it sounds like, well, I need a break, or I'm exhausted, or I feel disrespected, or I need love, or I need to be seen. Like, the answers are so much deeper that I'm like, okay, then Julia, what do you need to do to feel love? What do you need? Take a nap. Do you need a nap? Do you need a walk? Do you need to breathe? Like, what do you need? And that has taken it from just hiding behind alcohol to actually find my soul's need, which has created the sustainability in the choice. Right? Like, what is that drink, that hit, that vice giving you that you can't give yourself? Right? Because the Bible says, God says, I've given you everything that you need. Everything that you need. Part of it is, do you know what you need?
Yeah. And I think you said at the beginning, and maybe I just want to give a little like backstory too, but like, we understand like the struggle or the addiction is real. Like, it's hard. And it, like we said at the beginning, like, giving a little context, like, you know, I'm just over 40 and I've been drinking for 20 plus years now.
Oh my gosh, that makes you sound
like
old.
Half of my life I was drinking and going in and out and wrestling with this substance. And I have experienced and seen firsthand family members in and out of rehab. One of my family members like passed away. I've seen it destroy families. I've seen it totally disconnect people from the loved ones that they have. And so it's one of those things that is so prevalent in the world. And until you have like the bigger why, you hit the rock bottom, you hit a place where it's like truly clear-minded understanding. Like, I I keep thinking about this, or this thing keeps controlling me. Like whether it is shoes or shopping or food or whatever it is, put the thing that you think about constantly that is not moving you forward but bringing you back, and that's the substance.
100. And I think I love that you're saying this, because I think that there's always a can of worms here, right? Because, you know, when someone thinks, okay, I'm addicted, addiction looks like a lot of different puzzle pieces. It looks like habit. Like I'm just used to having a drink at 5, right? Like there's like the legitimate just pattern wheel at 5 o'clock when I'm cooking dinner, right? Or I'm out with the guys, or I'm at a work party. Like we have all of these habit loops. There's a book on this called The Habit Loop, right? That we have these habit loops.
Trigger points,
right? That go, oh, I'll just have a drink. There's that. Then there's a part that we start to go, well, actually your brain, right, starts to crave sugar. So there's so much sugar in the alcohol that sometimes we start to then go, well, then that's another piece. So oftentimes when I've talked to people who have stopped drinking but still crave it, it's not even trigger points, I just crave it all the time. You go, well, what else are you eating? And they're eating a ton of sugar or not sleeping very well. And so in theory, this was also me. I had adrenal fatigue at the same time that we decided to get sober. I had adrenal fatigue, which means I was pushing too hard physically. My output was more than my input. So my brain was looking for energy, and guess what it was craving? Alcohol, sugar, alcohol. So now I was at 5 o'clock and my brain was looking for like the next hit to kind of like keep going, when I didn't realize I had adrenal fatigue. But then I started to think, oh man, maybe I am an addict. You know, now it's an identity issue. So the huge puzzle piece here is that now I actually see myself as an addict because my dad was an addict, or my mom was an addict, or these people in my lives were addicts. So we're just addicted to these things. Now there's an identity piece around that. And that's brutal, because if I try to quit and I can't, and then my brain's not responding the way it needs to, and now I have an identity that says I'm an addict, now I think that that's just who I am. That makes this an uphill battle, as opposed to going, no, I have to unpack all of these cans of worms in order to do this well. And that is hard.
Yep. And specifically, I think not the alcohol, which is kind of a sugar trigger, and then food, and then lack of sleep, and then lack of ambition and motivation. So it's like it just stacks on each other. And then I would get frustrated with myself because I wouldn't follow through, and knowing certain things that I wanted to do, I was tired or I didn't feel good. And so I'll do it tomorrow, or I'll do it next week. And it's the same thing with stop drinking too. Well, Monday, or the first of the year, or on my birthday, or, you know, like it's
New Year's. I'm going to start on New Year's.
And there again, it's if you're listening to this now and you're like, maybe whether it's alcohol or something else, look at it and say, like, there's a point where there's never a good time.
Never.
And you've got to really analyze it. I remember being in church multiple times, and the pastor would be speaking on addiction.
Or anything.
But specifically addiction and alcohol. And I think, unfortunately, alcohol and porn are huge addictions for men specifically, and women have them too. But it's like, I would listen to that message and it would resonate, but I was like, yeah, that's not me. You know,
I must be tuning in. Holy Spirit talking to the guy next to me. Surely
there's someone here that really needs this more than I do.
Stand up. Who are you, sir? So we can all let this thing go.
This is bad, but not that bad, I'm sure. There's other people that are worse. And so it's just understanding there too. It's not just the one thing. And that's the point of what I'm trying to say, is that it's not just the alcohol. It's not just if you're addicted to spending and shopping and spending your future where you don't have any money and you have more month than money. It's the same concept, because it's a slippery slope, because then you're having to work more and harder to pay for the things in the past, which then prevents you from pursuing the things in the future and the present.
Yeah, and I love this, because I think that what we have to realize is that even in the Bible, God says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. I think that as we start to unpack whatever it is at any level that we are finding ourselves addicted to and basically in bondage to the things of this world, we have to realize that we are 3 in 1 too, right? We're going to have to unpack our mental addiction to whatever it is, our heart addiction, right? Like mentally to the point of like the sugars and the need for the relaxation or whatever it is that it's doing to my brain, but it's also protecting my heart, or to your point, it's disconnecting my heart, or like there's a piece of me that's not, my soul is not getting what it needs. And then with all my might, which in my mind is like the physical piece to this, that I think sometimes we just think that there is a one size fits all to overcoming addiction. And yes, there's a lot of programs out there and there's a ton of support groups, and all of those things I think are also really important, right? Community in this, because I mean, there's days that you and I'll go, oh, man, I'm struggling today. And just you standing there and going, I hear you, as opposed to what we used to do 8 years ago when I'd say, I just want to drink. And he's like, me too. Okay,
red or white?
Tonight.
Red or white?
Just tonight. We'll process that this weekend after a glass of wine.
Yeah, let's have a glass of wine and talk through this. Why we should not be drinking anymore.
Totally. But that was so real.
Yeah.
I mean, for years we had that pattern of 3 months without it, and then we'd celebrate, or 3 months and it was so hard and we can start again. And we just had so much. But I think it was because I wasn't looking at this as number one, this is going to be a journey. Mm-hmm. Number two, this is going to be a constant conversation that I get to have with me and God around what do I need right now? Like, it's not like you're done drinking and you're never going to want it again, right? Mm-hmm. Or you're done with your food addiction and you're never going to think about food again. This is it's one thing to get free, it's another to stay free. And I think that when I realized that this is going to be a mind, heart, and physical responsibility and positioning, it started to just make the playing field simpler. Mm-hmm. Not easier, just simpler.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So let me give my example, or like why, like my breaking point. Great. So hopefully it will relate with some men out there. Is that I remember, and it was in Florida too. And there again, we talked about it multiple times. We'd start, stop, kind of, and then we'd get triggered again, and we'd go back to the comfort of having some alcohol. And I remember I was working on the house. The house was gutted out. You were down with the other kids. I had Malachi with me. And we were ripping out the kitchen and the floors and stuff, and we had, I don't know, 12-pack or something in the house, and I was drinking, and Malachi was watching me, and I knew he was watching, and so when people are watching you, you tend to kind of hide it a little bit, mm-hmm. And so, but at one point he said, Dad, man, you've had like 4 or 5 beers, and I'm like, it just hit me, because it wasn't 4 or 5 beers. I had like 6 or 7 mm-hmm. or maybe 8 at that time mm-hmm. when he said that. And that was the tipping point for me that triggered me to say, is this the man, the dad, the husband that I'm going to be moving forward? Where one, if I have to hide it and not be like, put it on the table and say, I'm drinking these, like, so how much I'm drinking. And we tend to do that. You tend to skirt around or take a shot here or go hide. But when he said that, and it just made me realize, like, he's watching everything I do. And for me to lead, because it's been a constant conversation for us, for me to be able to lead not only you out of this, but also the kids, and set a new standard of like, no, this is controlling our life, and we're not going to let anything on earth control our life the way this is. And that was my tipping point. That was my breaking point of like, I think it was the next day or whatever. I think our experiences were real similar in time frame.
They were. Like
within a week. And I think we both got to the point, and I was like, I'm done. Like, I can't do this anymore mm-hmm. For all the reasons. And made that commitment of like, okay, no, this is the day that we're going to move forward. And like you said, it's been a journey. Yeah. It's been a process of like, you get triggered even when you go to the grocery store and they have alcohol there. We lived and moved back to Bend, Oregon, which has the most breweries.
Per capita.
Like, they're all over the place. And we've been to a bunch of them a couple years ago when we lived here. Mm-hmm. And so you get triggered by that. Yep. And so those habits and patterns of like being in a small town with, that's what they do. And I remember I was talking to a agent friend of ours. This was a couple years ago. She was describing Bend and driving me around, showing me different things. And she was like, yeah, it's, it can be known for an active alcoholic town mm-hmm. because everyone's out, hiking and mountain biking, skiing, all the things, but it all leads back to drinking.
Yeah, it's so good. I love that. And I think the thing that I remember right before, because then our next step was to actually get tattoos to solidify this, right? Because at some level, we'd been there so many times that we're not going to drink again, whether it's 3 months or a year or whatever, right? So many years of doing this over and over and over again that you first were stimulated by the idea of actually putting the date on your arm. And I followed suit by putting a word that's a part of my vision statement on my arm. But I remember sitting there and going, for the sake of this exercise, I need to walk this out with Trav. And so we actually talked about future moments that might be triggering, right? Okay, Malachi gets married, and at his wedding, are we not having champagne? When we hit another goal, right, or achieve another goal, we had so many patterns of let's go celebrate, right, on my 40th birthday in the Bahamas. Not that I want to go to the Bahamas, but it was like, are we not going to drink then? And I just felt like there was such vulnerability in shining the light around the areas of weakness, which disempowered the power of the stronghold, right? And I think that's what we do is we continue to hide around the shame or the guilt. I feel shame because I want to drink, or I feel guilty because my brain is thinking about this. But I feel like we have created such an environment for ourselves individually and together to go, let's shine the light on our weak moments. So one, we can really lean in together. And two, it says in our weakness, he is strong. So in theory, what that teaches us, if I'm not willing to get weak and I'm not willing to actually show some vulnerability, God's power can never be made known in the world around us. I will own, I live according to show no sign of weakness. Don't ask for help. Don't tell people I'm struggling. Don't anything. But if I'm actually living according to the word, then I'm not giving God the opportunity to be made known. Because I won't show my weakness, which therefore we can't relish in his glory.
Yeah. Yep. 100%.
And I have one more that I want to share with you. This is actually something I posted in the Facebook group, and it got tons of hits. And it was around the day that I stopped trying to make you happy actually made me a great wife. And this had to do with alcohol for me. And I look back and I had to own that for every year of our marriage, at a core level, my job had been to want to make you happy. And I don't think that's wrong. I think that's human nature. I think that's normal for a wife or a husband to go, I just want Travis to be happy. But what that slowly started to become for me was I enabled you to continue to drink. I actually came beside you, not knowing that I was doing this, but actually came beside you every time you had a drink to go, okay, if this will make you happy, have another drink. If this will allow you to feel or not feel, let's do it, right? Like I was legitimately enabling you because I had this unconscious commitment to say, I just want Travis to be happy. And I remember the day that I said, what do I actually really want for Travis? And it was, I don't want to make my husband happy. I want to see him be the best version of him. And I felt like then in that moment, Julia, get down and do push-ups with him in the hard moment. Don't go, yeah, let's have another drink, or sure, like whatever just makes you happy, or like, oh, does that push-up hurt? Stop. I know that these are silly analogies, but that's what I was doing, as opposed to when you came to me with a hard or vulnerability, that it had to be, I will stand with you and I will do another push-up with you and I will walk this out with you. And that has changed the way that I feel like I approach you, in that I'm not here to make you happy. I'm here to walk alongside you to be the best version of you. That has changed the game in helping me in your weak moments of alcohol, because if I hadn't landed on that, I almost guarantee you in this last 17 months, I probably would have hit the exit button just to make sure you were happy. Because my desire to make you happy was greater than my desire to see you be the best version of you. So had God not given me that seed of vision, I hate to say it, but for the sake of saying it, I probably would have tapped out because my desire to make you happy was stronger.
And I think, yeah, and I appreciate that. And I think it's vice versa. I mean, they're again having the support of each other and making that commitment to say, no, like when it's going to get tough, based off of our habits and patterns of what we've done for 20 years. And when it does, I will come alongside you and say, no.
Yeah.
And here's 3 things, as you were talking, here's 3 things that I would encourage you to do. If you're struggling, whatever it is, like we've said, put that vice, that addiction in. But one is make it public. Let everybody know, the people that are
Inner circle, please,
The
not
inner-
just social media.
Yeah,
Inner
don't just put it
circle.
on social media. Go tell the people that will really hold you accountable, and put it on social media. Put it everywhere. And
Yeah, I think that the idea is
make sure that you're telling people that are going to come alongside you and support you.
Because nobody on social media is going to be on that day when you're like so close to giving in. The social media world isn't going to meet you in your bedroom and go, I believe in you, and here's your why, and I can do this.
No, and the only thing I would say is both. Is put it out there for those people. And here's why. The second thing I would say is that you're probably going to have to disconnect from people that you have been hanging out with. And number three is...
Well, let me give a title for that one, just real quick, because I think that's huge. We all hate this word, but the boundaries. So be okay with the boundaries. You have to, right? So it's like the day that we quit was not the day that we were going to go back to the bar and pretend like we're quote unquote strong enough, right? Like boundaries over time, you get to extend your boundaries further, but your boundaries may be super tight right out of the gate because you're not strong enough to sustain the Christmas party with everybody drinking because you decided yesterday to not drink. So this year you're not going to the Christmas party. Next year, maybe, right? Like if you can extend your boundaries, but I think that to your point of we have to be okay with boundaries to support the decision.
Yep. And as we're talking this out, I think it's so important because the people that love you the most, if they struggle with the same thing, you can tell them, but they're not going to be the ones that are going to help you through because they're the ones that are going to want the comfort too. You're going to be the one that's leading them out.
Yeah.
So I think it's making it public, telling loved ones, telling social media, telling everybody. But then disconnecting and boundaries of like, okay, like I may not be able to go to these same environments or the work parties, everything that you're saying. And then 3 is that finding and joining a new community that truly supports you in whatever that journey is for you, that has been there maybe, or that's never struggled with it, but that can really walk alongside you. Because we have found some new friends through that process that also have been down that path that I have watched, and you're like, okay, like they can do it, I can do it. So it's finding the support and the people that have been down the path, and or someone that you can just go and vent to and talk about and talk through and say, hey, look, I'm struggling with this, and they can talk some sense into you.
For sure.
When you're feeling vulnerable and weak. So those are the 3 things that I would say that has really helped us. Because we went public and I did it to the extreme of getting a date on my tattooed on my arm.
Show everybody. There's his date. There's my word.
So there again, making it public, and when we're with friends and family and stuff like that, they have asked me, and I'll share with them. And then disconnecting from certain people and environments and knowing that it's not going to be one that wasn't even the place I wanted to be anyway. And then the third one, finding new people that I can come alongside that we actually have true commonalities and goals in life that are totally outside of the old me.
Yeah. And I agree with all those things. And our hope and our prayer as you listen to this podcast is that you are reminded that our freedom was given when Jesus died on the cross, right? That was that was the freedom play. He died on the cross for all of this. But now it is our journey to walk this thing out to stay free. So I also want to remind us that you're not crazy for having these moments that you go like, oh, there's the need for the addiction again, or oh man, I just want that comfort, or I want the security, or like those are freedom moments in my mind. So when that moment comes that you want the old ways, the old behavior, the addiction, the habits, don't be shocked when it happens. It's par for the course, and it's actually designed to continue to strengthen you in your resolve and to strengthen you in your commitment. And so part of this now is to work this out. Like we're working our freedom out, the freedom that we already have. But when those moments happen, I encourage you to continue to dig down and simply ask in this moment, what is it that I'm needing that I think this vice can give me that I or God just can't give me? That's how you will continue to stay free on your journey to sobriety of any kind.
I second that.
So we love you, Dream On community. We believe in you, and we pray a spirit of freedom to be yours.
On behalf of both of us, thank you for listening to another episode of Dream On. Don't forget to visit our website, The Dream Factory & Co., for all the show notes and other tools and resources to get you unstuck, clear, and helping you reprogram your thoughts and beliefs so that you can live out your dreams with a community that supports and challenges you. Until next time, dream on.